Welcome, everyone. Today we have John Eade from MSquared Capital with us, and we are so delighted because MSquared Capital are one of our educational partners and sponsors for 2025. I love the private lending space, and we incorporated private lending into the Broker's Bible late last year because there is definitely a need to educate and provide different lending policy solutions for clients that typically may not fit the bank's mold. And today we've got John to chat with us about what they're seeing at MSquared Capital and how brokers can contact John and utilize the different lending facilities that they have. And John's going to explain what they do and certainly how they can help your customers and clients. So welcome, John.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, look, I just want to dive in. I love having so many different finance options available to our members. Now, most of our members, John, are residential home loan brokers. And, you say the word private lending, and sometimes that can be a bit overwhelming. Brokers maybe overthink it. It's a bit scary. So talk to us, and how do we know when we're looking at a private lending deal? Take us through everything.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you for that. Thank you for the introduction. Specifically for brokers who are working on primarily home lending deals, you've touched on it. They tend to overcomplicate this space. They don't know much about it, and they can tend to not approach a lender to try and find out ways to be able to pitch this sort of stuff to their clients. What I want to say to those brokers is you already have the skills and the resources that you need to not only look into this space, but to understand it and to explain it to your clients. I always explain to brokers who are curious is that in the main bank space, you spend a lot of your time working on actually getting the approval, whereas in the private space, it's more about getting the client to understand the features and the benefits of considering this space, and it all comes down to opportunity costs. Finance brokers are well equipped to have those sorts of discussions, and being an education-based solutions-focused BDM that I am, I love walking my brokers through that sort of discussion. So for those brokers who are watching this and thinking, I want to do it, but I'm a bit nervous, all I ask is that you reach out. I'd love to be able to walk you through it and know that you've already got the skill set to understand most of this space. Just requires a little bit of tweaks. You don't need to start learning from scratch. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You've already got that ready to go.
Yeah. And what typically, let's talk about what you're seeing in the market as being, good opportunities, so that brokers can maybe look out for these opportunities or understand when they've actually got one in front of their desk. Like, how do they go about it? What are you saying?
Certainly. We'll start with the first part of that question, which is about what you need to see. I think when you've got a self-employed client and their asset background, they've got some assets there behind them, property assets, certainly that's a really good start. There's always going to be options there. You've got, when you think you've got a scenario as a broker, that you've lined up perhaps a main bank option or even a low-doc lender, I would suggest that you get a private credit option as a third option. It gets you into the habit of being able to start explaining the reasons why you should, or a client should consider or may consider a loan in this space. And then eventually there will be a time where a private lend would be the best option for your client. And because you've already put in the work of having to pitch it to your client, it's more so of a formality for you than having to start from scratch. So certainly some opportunities there. And in terms of brokers who are not doing much in this space, that's what I always encourage them to do. Start getting there early, present it as a third option. I totally understand that the client's always going to want to take the Commonwealth to the NAB if they've got them there.
Yeah, of course. And one thing that we focus on inside the Broker's Bible, it's solutions, and we don't even have interest rates, fees, charges. It's not about that. And sometimes I find that brokers get so caught up in the interest rate, and that's the first thing that they focus on. And particularly in private lending, that's not at the top here. We're about finding the right solution, and it's actually not the broker's role to decide whether or not that rate is right for the client. It's the client's role. You need to present these options, and as you mentioned, it's definitely not going to be, your first or second option that, but you do need a backup. And this is where the private lending can act really swiftly. Generally, you guys can settle in a matter of days and not weeks. And it's more of that common sense approach. Obviously, things like exit strategies are really important to go through with your customer, and also when you're presenting your file to yourselves. But I feel like there's some great opportunities to not let those deals just go, and don't decide on behalf of your client if the rate's good enough, because it's about the opportunity and it is about providing a solution, and they make the final decision.
Certainly, yeah. And to address that, I find that a lot of scenarios, clients will look at an offer, and if the broker's done a good job of explaining the opportunity cost and the strategy, most times the client will be okay with the terms that are presented. So that should be very encouraging for those who sort of look at an offer letter for the first time as a broker and go, I don't know if my broker's going to take, or my client's going to take this up. I don't know how they're going to feel. It's just a matter of presenting it, putting it in front of them, like you said, and providing them options. This is a solutions-based offer is what it is at the end of the day.
Are there any particular, markets that you're seeing a lot of? Is it, for small business, obviously, is it cash flow? Is it paying out ATO debt? Is it, short-term funding? So generally, even bridging. I know that you do bridging, don't you? Yeah.
Certainly, yes. And this is another tip for brokers who are in the resi space, is that there's a lot of scenarios that a private lend can be an option for. So you're looking at acquisitions of resi and commercial property, refinances involving resi and commercial property. You're looking at equity releases for most purposes, including tax debt and construction. You're looking at bridging, and you're looking at residual stock. So lots and lots of scenarios that brokers always have on their desks that a private lend could potentially be at least a plan B for. And in terms of what you see, it's all cyclical. It depends on the time of year. It depends on what's happening in the economy and the markets. The start of the year, you tend to see a lot more purchases that couldn't find a home towards the end of the previous year that are looking to be placed. And then you've got your Christmas periods where businesses are planning and setting up for the potential quiet periods, or periods where they might not be able to access funding from the bank. So they're planning for that. And when you're doing your fact finds with your clients, just about asking open-ended questions about their plans, which can tend to uncover the opportunities to reach out to a private lender.
And I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's about know your client and asking those questions. Don't just look at it and go, well, okay, it doesn't fit the box of the lenders that I've got in front of me. But just asking your customer, would you be open to looking at some other funding options which we can use in the interim? And sometimes this is really like it's a staged approach, and you're presenting to your client, okay, we would love to go with this particular bank, but unfortunately you don't qualify. However, I can get you in with this lender, MSquared Capital. It's going to be an interim solution, 6 to 12 months, 3 months, whatever it may be. And then we'll be able to refinance you back when we've got the financial data or the means to get you back, into mainstream lending. And again, it is the broker's role into educating the customer and presenting all the facts, and then they can make that decision about moving forward.
Spot on, you've nailed it. Yeah, all this part of the market is doing is getting the client access to funding and buying the broker and the client time to sort out their longer term strategies. That's all this is at the end of the day.
And look, what we're seeing right now is so many opportunities for small business and self-employed applicants. And although the banks have some great policies to help out, they don't fund cash flow, they don't fund businesses. And this is where brokers need to understand that a home loan's a home loan. It's not business lending. And educating your customer also on that there needs to be sometimes some sophisticated finance solutions, but they're actually simple. The bank's not going to do it under a standard home loan, but you can jump in and do something, and then with a plan to refinance and position them better, maybe even with a home loan lender plus a lender that does business funding. So I think it's all really important for a broker to have a holistic view. And it doesn't mean that you've got to understand everything, but if you can tee up a relationship and have someone like John there to answer your questions when you might be stuck. I know, John, you will hold the broker's hand right through, and you'll be open and honest and say yes or no, you can help. Like, you know, you're very upfront, and that's what I love. You're not going to waste anyone's time, and certainly you're there to help if you possibly can. So how can brokers, what is the process in terms of referring to you? Do they need to seek approval through their compliance team? Just talk us through that briefly.
Yeah, certainly. So MSquared currently is on several aggregator panels, so that's very straightforward. For those that are we're not on panel for, then the broker would have to follow their standard process to reach out to their aggregator if they feel that there's no one on panel who can assist. And to expand on that, one of the things that always surprises me is that a broker will approach me who maybe is tentative about looking at the space, and they'll be always surprised that they've often got most of the stuff that they need to be able to have a chat to me anyway. So that's always a pleasant experience from the broker, just to touch on one of the points you've addressed there.
Yeah, and I guess when we are so heavily regulated in the home loan space, we collect so many documents. You know, it's probably, in fact, a lot more than what you would actually require potentially in your space. But what we've got inside the Broker's Bible is a private lending hub. We've got all your details, obviously, in there so that we can connect brokers with you. And again, thank you for jumping on board with the Broker's Bible. And I'm excited just to share what you do, what MSquared Capital does, just so that we can help educate brokers and provide more services and support to their self-employed customers.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to chat to you, and thank you for the arvo.
Oh, thanks so much, John.